Evening was falling over the city slowly and softly, like a golden mist spreading over the trees and park paths. Jason walked along a shaded alley lined with centuries-old lindens and maples, whose leaves softly rustled in the gentle summer breeze. The air was filled with the freshness of grass and the subtle scent of blooming jasmines, which seemed especially bright at this time of day. After a long, tiring, and stressful day on the film set, this moment of silence, peace, and harmony was a true relief for him, a rare breath of fresh air when he could just stop and listen to himself. Jason's footsteps echoed off the stone-paved paths. He savored every second, the soft glow of street lamps, the endless calm, the slight coolness that pleasantly touched his skin. He walked slowly, letting his thoughts drift far away, to a place without hustle and tension. But suddenly, like a sharp jab, loud voices broke the quiet of the park. They came from the right, cutting through the gentle rustling of leaves and the soft whisper of the wind. Jason stopped, became alert, and listened closely. The sounds were a mixture of laughter and harsh words that didn't fit the peaceful atmosphere of the place. His gaze fixed on the source of the noise. He saw a group of young men, 5 or 6 of them, crowding around a girl in a wheelchair. Their faces wore defiant smirks, and their voices sounded loud and aggressive. The girl sat motionless, her hands tightly gripping the wheelchair's armrests, her eyes darting anxiously and fearfully. Her shoulders were tense, her breathing uneven, and it seemed she tried to escape with her gaze but couldn't. Jason felt something inside him suddenly tighten, as if an invisible hand squeezed his heart. He noticed the guys pushing the wheelchair back and forth, like a toy, paying no attention to the fact that before them was not an object, but a person who needed protection and respect. One of the guys cut through the evening silence with a voice. "So, want to take a ride with us?" The tone was more mocking than inviting. The girl flinched slightly and tried to turn away, but that only caused a new wave of laughter. Jason instantly realized the situation could quickly get out of control. He felt anxiety rising inside and a strong urge to help, to do something to stop this madness. He quickened his pace, clenching his fists, but trying to stay calm. He knew he had to act carefully, yet decisively, not to escalate the conflict, but also not to leave the girl in trouble. At that moment, everything around seemed to freeze. The streetlights appeared brighter, and the sounds of the park grew muted. All of Jason's attention focused on this small scene. The group of boys who had forgotten boundaries, and the girl whose eyes pleaded for help. He felt a growing inner strength and determination that could not be ignored. This evening, which was supposed to be ordinary, turned into a moment where the choice was clear. Walk away or become a real hero. Jason took a deep breath and stepped forward, ready to change the course of events. Jason stopped a few steps away from the group, feeling the tension in the air almost tangible. All sounds around seemed to disappear. Only the faint rustle of leaves and his own rapid breathing remained. Inside him, a struggle ignited, the voices of reason and heart debating. He understood perfectly well that intervening in such a situation could provoke an unpredictable reaction. The young men might respond with aggression, and then everything could spiral out of control. But he couldn't leave the girl alone, frightened, vulnerable, surrounded by those who didn't know limits. Questions flashed through Jason's mind like a kaleidoscope. What if I'm wrong? Maybe this is just teenage mischief. What if they start fighting with me? Is it worth risking my own safety for a stranger? And at the same time, another voice, quiet but insistent. This is your chance to do something important. Never be afraid to be the one who stands up to protect the weak. Sometimes heroism isn't about stunts on screen, but simple human compassion. Jason shifted his gaze to the girl. She was silent, frozen as if waiting for disaster. Her eyes were not just scared, they reflected loneliness and pain beyond words. It seemed that at this moment she wasn't just in need of help. She was searching for support that only someone strong and reliable could provide. Jason's heart tightened and doubt began to recede, giving way to determination. He understood he couldn't just walk away, not after what he had seen. Memories surfaced, childhood, when he himself faced injustice and knew how important it was to have someone nearby who wouldn't let you give up. Those life lessons learned off camera and off stage were stronger than any script. He recalled how once a man he knew, who seemed strong and confident, simply approached and said, "I'll help," without asking questions. That small kindness became an anchor in the stormy sea of life. At that moment, Jason made a decision, not to remain silent, not to stay in the shadows, but to become the light that would chase away the darkness around. He took a deep breath, squared his shoulders, and prepared to take a step that could change not only this situation but much within himself. A flame ignited inside, a flame of responsibility and courage. He involuntarily asked himself a question that often returned in his life. What does it mean to be strong? Is it physical strength or strength of spirit? Can you be a hero if you're afraid? These thoughts raced through his mind, but Jason knew the answer. True strength is born from action, not fear. Passers-by on the alley kept glancing back, sensing the tension of the moment. It seemed the entire park held its breath, waiting for what would happen next. Jason took a step forward, his eyes meeting the hooligans. There was defiance and doubt there. He didn't know how this story would end, but he was ready to accept any outcome. His fingers clenched into fists involuntarily, but his voice remained calm as he began to speak. His heart beat in time with his thoughts, and his mind focused on one goal: to protect. This was not just a moment of determination. It was a moment when a person chooses between indifference and humanity. Jason took a confident step forward, as if cutting through the invisible wall of tension thickening around the group of young men. His figure was calm, but every movement reflected inner strength. His gaze, fixed directly on the hooligans, did not waver or retreat. He spoke slowly but firmly. "Guys, that's enough. Leave her alone." His voice was restrained, but so clear that the words felt weighty and demanded obedience. An unexpected silence fell around. The boys stopped laughing as if not expecting anyone to dare contradict them. Their eyes first showed surprise, then disbelief. The girl, curled up in her wheelchair, slightly lifted her head and looked at Jason with hope, as if searching for a protector in him. One of the boys, the tallest with a smirk on his face, stepped forward and mockingly asked, "Who do you think you are, telling us what to do?" His voice was a challenge, and his gaze tried to find a weakness in Jason. Jason did not back down. His answer was even and calm. "I'm the one who won't let you hurt the defenseless." Those simple words seemed to strike an invisible shield surrounding the hooligans. Their smiles began to fade and their laughter gradually ceased. To their own surprise, they felt the seriousness of the situation. Glances crossed, and in each pair of eyes was either readiness for further conflict or doubt. The girl watched this dialogue with wide-open eyes. Her look held hope and gratitude, but also a fear that did not leave her. She said nothing, but every gesture spoke of how important what Jason was doing was. Watching what was happening, Jason noticed some of the boys beginning to glance at each other, unsure how to react next. Their confidence wavered. For the first time in a long time, someone put them in their place without shouting or aggression. It was a subtle but crucial turning point. Jason felt the tension grow with every passing second. He understood this was only the beginning, and that the outcome depended on his next words and actions. Inside, emotions boiled, a mixture of adrenaline, responsibility, and the desire to protect the weak. He locked eyes with the leader of the group and said, a little louder and firmer, "I'm not leaving until you leave her alone." It wasn't just a warning, it was a firm conviction that couldn't be ignored. The evening dusk in the park seemed to stretch in anticipation of the resolution. Standing before the group of young men, Jason felt the tension in the air literally electrify the space around them. His firm stance was unexpected. They were used to fear and impunity going hand in hand. But now something had changed. The boys exchanged glances. Their eyes reflected a mixture of surprise and irritation. One of them, the tallest and most confident, stepped forward, trying to mask his embarrassment with a smirk, and blurted out, "And who do you think you are to tell us what to do? You think we're afraid of you?" His voice trembled, but his words were defiant. He tried to show strength, but deep down felt the situation was slipping out of control. Jason didn't back down. His calm and firm response, like a stone wall, met the challenge. "I'm the one who won't let those weaker be hurt." It sounded not just like words, but a promise, strong and unconditional. The young men began to get nervous. Some grew uneasy. Uncertainty flickered in their eyes. Jason noticed that several of the boys, not sharing the leader's aggression, started looking away, as if realizing the injustice of what was happening. A silence hung between them, as if the entire park was holding its breath. It seemed time had stopped, and only Jason's heart beat loudly in his chest, reflecting his inner resolve. Suddenly, one of the younger, less confident boys quietly said, "Maybe that's enough. She didn't do anything." The words came out almost as a whisper, but they carried a hope for a peaceful resolution. The group's leader snorted irritably but looked embarrassed. His confidence was cracking, and he began to back down, casting a long look at Jason, filled with confusion and dismay. The other boys slowly stepped back, and the tension began to ease. Jason relaxed his shoulders, feeling as if an invisible weight had been lifted. The girl in the wheelchair smiled for the first time that evening, quietly and sincerely. In that moment, Jason understood that sometimes strength isn't in fists, but in the courage to stand up for those who cannot defend themselves. After the hooligans started to retreat slowly, the air seemed to hang in anticipation, as if the entire park held its breath, watching what would happen next. Jason stood his ground, feeling an unshakable resolve growing inside him. This was the moment when the girl's safety, and possibly much more, depended on his steadiness. His gaze remained cold and focused, like a rock in a raging sea. He understood there was no room for relaxation or loss of vigilance now. The hooligans' retreat was only temporary, and it was up to him to prevent them from returning stronger. At that moment, all of Jason's life lessons surfaced in his mind. Countless hours of training, the fight for justice, moments of doubt and fear he overcame to become who he was today. He knew true strength wasn't only physical power, but the ability to stand one's ground to the very end, refusing to give in to threats. His thoughts were interrupted by a quiet but firm voice inside. "You are not just an actor on screen. Today you are a protector, a support, a hope for someone in need." These words filled him with energy and will. Clenching his fists, Jason took another step forward, approaching the girl who still sat curled up in her wheelchair. He quietly said to her, "I'm here. I won't let them hurt you." His voice was gentle but carried ironclad confidence. The girl lifted her eyes to him. In them was not only gratitude but the first spark of hope she had felt in a long time. Jason felt the responsibility for this small, vulnerable world settle on his shoulders, and he wasn't going to let it go. He looked at the hooligans who now stood aside, seemingly trying to decide what to do next. Jason understood that determination and calm were his strongest allies. He allowed himself no trace of fear or doubt. At that moment, like a thunderclap from a clear sky, passers-by were drawn to the park by the noise. Several people stopped, watching what was happening. Jason knew the situation was now under control, but that was no reason to relax. He took a deep breath, letting some of the tension ease, but remained ready for any turn of events. His heart beat steadily, but inside his chest burned a flame of responsibility and courage. Jason knew this was only the beginning of the path, but he had already made his choice, to be a light in the darkness for those who had lost hope. As the hooligans slowly moved back to a safe distance and the bystanders began to gather, an invisible web of care and attention seemed to weave around the girl in the wheelchair. She remained still, as if trying to process everything that had happened, but her eyes showed fatigue, not only physical but deep, soulful weariness. Jason stepped closer and crouched down to be at her level. His voice softened, filled with warmth and care. "Are you okay? Are you scared?" The girl slowly nodded, barely noticeable, but her eyes remained wet from unspoken tears and worries. In her gaze was gratitude, but also anxiety, as if her world still balanced on a fragile edge. For the first time in a long while, she allowed herself to relax a little, feeling genuine support nearby. Her hands trembled slightly, and Jason gently placed his palm on one of them, conveying a sense of safety and reassurance. "Did they scare you?" he asked, trying not to upset her further. "Yes," she whispered softly. "I'm scared when they laugh and push the wheelchair. I don't know why they do that." Her words sounded sincere and innocent, reminding him how fragile and defenseless a child's world can be, especially when forced to face cruelty and indifference. Jason felt a growing desire inside to protect this girl not only from those boys, but from the whole world, which can sometimes be so unfair. "You're strong," he said, smiling, "and I'm here to help you. You're not alone." At that moment, a middle-aged woman approached them, likely the girl's mother or caregiver. She looked worried and grateful at the same time, quickly took her daughter's hand, and looked at Jason with deep respect. "Thank you," she said with a slight tremor in her voice. "We don't know what we would have done without you." Jason nodded, feeling the responsibility of this moment fill him to the brim. He knew, today he had become the one who changed the course of events, giving hope and faith in goodness. People began to gather around. Some were already calling the police to report what had happened. The atmosphere in the park gradually shifted. Instead of fear and tension, a spirit of mutual help and support appeared on the streets. The girl looked at Jason once more and quietly said, "Thank you for not walking past." Those words became his most precious acknowledgement, a reminder that true strength lies in kindness and the willingness to help. When the hooligans finally began to retreat slowly, as if defeated by an invisible but powerful barrier, the air around the park seemed to ease a sigh. Their steps grew more hesitant and distant, and the confidence with which they had just surrounded the girl in the wheelchair seemed to dissipate like smoke in the wind. But even as they disappeared from sight, the tension still hung in the air like a thick fog. The park did not immediately return to its usual calm. Passers-by, standing at a safe distance, exchanged looks, some with relief, others with anxiety, as if sensing that the story was not yet over. Jason, still beside the girl and her mother, watched the departing boys. His eyes reflected a mixture of fatigue and vigilance. He understood that the situation was not simply over. It was just one episode in a much longer and more complex story. Jason's gaze swept across the group of passers-by who had begun discussing what had happened, whispering, exchanging phone numbers, with some already holding phones ready to call the police. He felt the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders like a heavy burden. He was not only a witness but also a protector. The girl leaned back slightly, exhaled, and closed her eyes as if trying to clear the last minutes of fear from her mind. Her small hands trembled, and her mother hugged her, as if trying to convey all her protection and warmth. At that moment, Jason heard a quiet question nearby. "How often does this happen?" He turned and saw an elderly woman with kind eyes holding a shopping bag. The question was not mere curiosity. It carried a deep concern for the fate of this city, for the fate of those who cannot protect themselves. Jason hesitated. Should he tell the truth or try to soften reality? But honesty seemed the only right choice. "Unfortunately, not rarely," he said quietly. "These situations happen everywhere, and often those who should protect look away." The passers-by listened closely, some bowing their heads in support and understanding. The atmosphere shifted, from fear to a resolve to care. Jason felt this evening had become a lesson and reminder. The fight for justice doesn't end in one moment. It continues in every deed, every thought, every heart. Evening gradually settled over the park, wrapping it in the soft, warm glow of street lamps reflecting off leaves still wet from recent rain. But in this corner of the world, amidst the silence and faint rustle of trees, something greater was happening. Not just the end of one story, but the birth of a new hope. Jason sat down next to the girl in the wheelchair, trying to be not just a stranger, but a support and friend. His eyes shone with warm compassion, and his voice was gentle yet confident. "Everything's okay. I'm here. You're not alone." She looked at him, feeling for the first time in a long while that she could trust. Her small hand touched his hesitantly, as if seeking protection. In that simple gesture was an indescribable strength of mutual support and understanding. The girl's mother, standing nearby, quietly exhaled, a smile of gratitude and relief spreading across her face. She looked at Jason with deep respect, seeing not just a random passerby, but a person capable of changing the world around. The passers-by slowly dispersed, and the park's atmosphere filled with a sense of calm and safety, stronger now than before. Even the air felt lighter, as if freed from the weight of fear. Jason took a deep breath, allowing himself a moment of relaxation, but inside burned a fire of responsibility and a desire to make the world better. He knew this was no random act, but the beginning of a path requiring courage and strength every day. Words often echoed in his mind. To be a hero means not only to win on screen, but to stand up for those who cannot stand for themselves. Every help, every kind word is a brick in the wall of justice. The girl smiled sincerely, without fear. It was a smile that warmed the heart, reminding that light can always overcome darkness. Jason rose, carefully supporting her wheelchair, and together they headed toward the park exit. Behind them followed a stream of hope, small but unshakable. And at that moment, under the soft light of the street lamps, Jason understood the main thing. True heroes are those who are not afraid to be there when it really matters. And even when the hooligans left, the tension did not disappear. It turned into a challenge that must be met.